targeting the faithful. A Catholic church outside of the nation's capital is set on fire over the weekend. We hear from the pastor of St. Jane de Chantal. Abortion agenda. President Joe Biden weighs using government power following the overturning of Roe versus Wade. We're at the White House. Church in Germany. An influential cardinal warns about abuses of the country's synodal way. And the grace of compassion. The Holy Father says we are called to be like the Good Samaritan. We'll explain. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, July 11th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this feast of St. Benedict. I'm Tracy Sable. Weekend vandalism struck 3 houses of worship in Bethesda, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. St. Jane Frances de Chantal Catholic Church suffered the worst damage from a fire believed to be arson in its sanctuary. The video posted on the parish's YouTube channel appears to show flames near the tabernacle. Sunday Mass had to be conducted in the school gymnasium. 2 neighboring churches were also vandalized. Authorities are investigating. And joining us now is Father Samuel Giese, pastor at St. Jane Frances de Chantal Catholic Church. Father, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. First off, I just want to say how very sorry we all are, and we're all praying for you and your parish during this time. That said, if you don't mind, can you tell us more about what happened over the weekend and what was your reaction when you found out?
Well, first of all, I want to say that what may seem to be in the video of flames near the tabernacle are actually reflections of the fires that were set on pews in the main body of the church. So there was no fire in the sanctuary area. What happened was at about 2 o'clock in the morning, the smoke detectors in the church went off and the alarm system summoned the fire department and then contacted me as well. So I went over to the church and the fire department had pretty much already abated all the fires at that point in time. Obviously, it's shocking to experience something like that, particularly in the middle of the night. And it's distressing, but there was not really any structural damage to the church. And I think we're actually in pretty good shape in that way.
Oh, that's so good to hear. What about members of your parish? What have you heard from them about this? What have they said to you?
Well, as you know, a parish church is a spiritual home for people. It's where so many important events in our lives take place, as well as Sunday worship. So it is distressing for people to know that their parish church was the center of a hate crime. But people are resilient. People are fortified by their faith in God. It's for moments like this that we prepare ourselves, and the words of Christ are that firm foundation for the storms that come to us. So I think people here in the parish are pretty resilient and supportive and find a lot of encouragement in one another.
Yeah, and I'm curious, as we've been seeing all these parishes unfortunately being attacked nationwide over the past few months, were you concerned that it could happen in your own parish, and did you take any type of steps to prepare?
Well, I think probably parishes across the country are more security conscious in these last few years. And the Archdiocese has certainly advised us about security measures. We have people in our parish who really have significant backgrounds in security. So we have taken many steps to safeguard our property and our worshipers. But for someone who's determined to carry out some sort of an arson and vandalism attack, it's difficult to prevent against all contingencies.
Yeah, one thing I know that when you talked to your congregation after the arson, one of the things you said, the church is more than a physical building. Can you tell us a little bit more about your message?
Well, certainly we are the living stones of the church. Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am in their midst. And that's whether it's in our regular parish church or whether that's in our gym as we are here, we're on Sunday. I've said Mass in a lot of different places, as I'm sure most priests have. I've been a prison chaplain, I've been deployed with the Army, and the important thing is that the faith that's in the hearts of the people who gather to celebrate the Eucharist and to open their lives to Jesus Christ, and we can do that anywhere.
Absolutely. You know, there was another story I thought really interesting that you talked about. It was about a Bolshevik revolutionary and a Christian woman. Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's a story that I heard, and I was, I can't remember where I first heard it, but it was something that the Bolsheviks did, was they used churches for a lot of different purposes, obviously, other than worship. They use them for barracks to store equipment, and even dissembled them and sent them to other places. And the story goes that soon after the revolution, one of the revolutionaries, a Bolshevik, said to an old woman as she was making her way into her church to pray, when we tear down your churches, you will have nothing to remind you of your God. And she replied, really? Can you tear down the stars from the sky?
That's a really, really wonderful message to get out there and let everybody know. And Father, before I let you go, I'm wondering, is there anything else that you would like our audience to know?
Well, the thing that is the upside of an experience like this is just the tremendous amount of encouragement, support, promise of prayers, the offers of assistance. We've had to, for instance, reschedule a funeral, and one of my neighboring pastors said, sure, come here. We're glad to have you. Our church is your church. And we've just had this from so many corners that the response has just simply been uplifting for me and for the parish. And I want to thank everyone for their prayers, their offers of assistance and help and concern. We're doing fine. Our God is a wonderful God, and we are doing fine. So I want to thank everyone.
Well, Father, we thank you for coming on and talking to us about this, and you and your parish are in our prayers. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Good night.
Abortion supporters are proposing an abortion clinic on a ship in the Gulf of Mexico. Fundraising is underway for the floating clinic in federal waters. Abortion supporters say it is a legal option that would bypass pro-life laws. President Joe Biden keeps pressing for, in his words, a national law that reinstates Roe versus Wade. This as the leaders of his own faith condemned the president's executive action to protect abortion access, calling the president's actions, quote, deeply disturbing and tragic. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, what the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops finds deeply disturbing and tragic is that the president is, quote, seeking every possible avenue to deny unborn children their most basic human and civil right, the right to life.
President Joe Biden, riding his bike in Delaware, is asked what message he has for abortion supporters.
Yes, keep protesting, because keep making your point. It's critically important. We can do a lot of things to accommodate the rights of women in the meantime.
He also acknowledged,
but as president, I don't have the authority to say that we're going to, state Roe v. Wade as the law of the land. The only way we do that is through an election in the United States Congress. In the meantime, states can make those judgments.
But Archbishop William Lori of Baltimore wrote, rather than using the power of the executive branch to increase support and care to mothers and babies, the president's executive order seeks only to facilitate the destruction of defenseless, voiceless human beings. I implore the president to abandon this path that leads to death and destruction and to choose life. As always, the Catholic Church stands ready to work with this administration and all elected officials to protect the right to life of every human being and to ensure that pregnant and parenting mothers are fully supported in the care of their children before and after birth. Meanwhile, on a packed White House South Lawn with lawmakers and families of shooting victims in attendance, the president commemorates the passage of the Safer Communities Act, meant to reduce gun violence.
Make no mistake about it. This legislation is real progress, but more has to be done.
Separately tonight, President Biden is unveiling the first image from NASA's new James Webb Space Telescope. Now, we're told it's the deepest view of the cosmos ever captured. Among the images, a planet from outside our solar system. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And coming up later in the newscast, analysis of the remarks on abortion and the president's low approval numbers from Jon Schweppe of the American Principles Project. Lawmakers are back on Capitol Hill after the holiday break. However, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Richard Blumenthal have COVID. And Senator Patrick Leahy is out recovering from hip surgery. This complicates the Democrats' push to pass a laundry list of bills before the August recess. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with the latest. Eric?
Well, good evening to you, Tracy. You know, some of the items on that long laundry list of things that they want to be able to get passed is a multi-billion-dollar COVID relief bill, another Build Back Better Act package, and a chip manufacturing package. Now, Democrats know that Republicans can stop any of these bills, initiatives at any time, but Democratic leadership says that they're going to continue to move forward.
We need to do better, but the country wants to see us getting stuff done. How are we responding to inflation? There are bills in the House right now that Republicans won't even look at to bring down costs, to raise revenue, to put money in the American people's pocket.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is getting the ball rolling on a nearly $1 trillion reconciliation package. He's working with Senator Joe Manchin to allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug costs, including insulin. The plan may also include climate change provisions and repealing some of President Trump's 2017 tax cuts. But Senator Mitch McConnell is throwing a monkey wrench into that idea. Let me be perfectly clear, there will be no bipartisan USCCA as long as Democrats are pursuing a partisan reconciliation bill. Leader McConnell is talking about a bill designed to boost U.S. high-tech research and manufacturing, especially the microchip industry here in the U.S. The future of that bill is uncertain. Democrats still want to pass a multi-billion-dollar COVID relief bill to cover the development of vaccines and therapeutics.
I have felt it's very important to get a COVID relief bill, and we're going to try to do everything we can. Here in the Senate, as you know, we passed our bill. The House didn't. So we're still awaiting the House and seeing what they are going to do.
But Republican Senator Rick Scott tells me these Democrat priorities are ruining the country.
We got to cut taxes. We got to reduce government. We got to make sure our government's accountable. We got to become energy independent. We can get inflation down, but not with the Democrats' reckless spending, constant spending.
And over on the House side, House Democrats plan to pass 2 abortion bills just this week, one of which is abortion on demand that actually did not pass the Senate a few months ago. Another one is to give a woman the right to be able to go into another state to be able to have an abortion. As of right now, Senate Democrats don't have the votes to get these passed because of Republican objection. Reporting from the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Sri Lanka is in political turmoil following weekend protests over the country's struggling economy. The president says that he will resign this week after demonstrators took over the presidential palace. Protesters also want the prime minister to resign. He says that he will remain until a new government is in place. Meanwhile, Pope Francis says that he is praying for the South Asian nation. In Japan, the party of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, assassinated last Friday, secured a majority in parliamentary elections over the weekend. The former prime minister's Liberal Democratic Party won a large victory and vows to achieve his unfinished goals. Meanwhile, the country is mourning Abe's assassination. A wake was held today at a Buddhist temple in Tokyo. A family funeral takes place tomorrow. Abe was killed while delivering a campaign speech. He was 67 years old. And in Brazil, the country's president takes part in a pro-life rally. Brazil's president receives cheers during a march for Jesus over the weekend. Jair Bolsonaro reiterated his pro-life and anti-drug positions. He told supporters in Sao Paulo, quote, "We are defenders of the Brazilian family." Coming up, analyzing President Joe Biden's declining approval ratings and his push to protect abortion. President Joe Biden is looking into whether he has the authority to declare a public health emergency concerning abortion. The comments come after the president already signed an executive order to make abortions more accessible. And joining us now is Jon Schweppe, Policy Director for the Americans Principles Project. Jon, welcome back. Always so great to be with you. First off, your thoughts on this so-called public health emergency related to abortions that President Biden is looking into.
Yeah, I think what he's trying to do here is placate his extreme radical pro-abortion base that is frankly really frustrated with the situation, because we're about to have a lot of states that for the first time since Roe are banning abortion, with, of course, exceptions for the mother's life. And so this is about to heat up. And I think he's trying to do as much as he can. But the reality is he doesn't have 60 votes in the Senate. He doesn't have the votes to break a filibuster. I'm not sure the Democrats would even want to do that if they could, because Republicans are likely to take the Senate next year. And so they're kind of in a tough situation where, you know, this is what's going to happen with Roe being overturned. The states are going to get to decide their own abortion laws.
Yeah, speaking of the president, John, a new Rasmussen Reports poll has his approval rating at just 37% among likely voters. Your reaction to that, and what do you think is fueling those numbers?
Well, certainly he's struggling with Republicans and independents, not just because of his extreme views on all these social issues, but because of the economy, because of inflation, because it seems like an administration that isn't really very focused. But I'm also hearing, and I saw this in the Rasmussen numbers, that he's starting to struggle a little bit with Democrats. And I think Democrats are frustrated, you know, especially progressives who really saw an opportunity here with the trifecta, with the House, Senate, and presidency to get a lot done. And ultimately, they're not really going to get that. I mean, we are up against the clock here, and it's not looking like they're going to get Build Back Better. I mean, frankly, there's bipartisan priorities like, you know, big tech antitrust that don't even look like they're going to pass. So it's a tough situation, and I think Democrats are pretty depressed, and you know, certainly Republicans and independents want to vote in someone else.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but I really want to get to this question here. A group called Shutdown D.C., they're offering money to workers in D.C. who spot and report the locations of the conservative Supreme Court justices. And just the other day, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, he was actually forced to leave a restaurant where he was dining because pro-abortion protesters, they showed up outside of the establishment. Let's talk a little bit more about this, what it signals, and the potential safety issues here.
Well, this is targeted harassment, pure and simple. This is about violence. You know, that steakhouse, actually, I know that steakhouse quite well in D.C. It's Morton's, and it's a place where actually Republicans and Democrats both congregate, and it's a pretty peaceful place. So this is the kind of scary thing about the left. They're increasingly turning to violence, increasingly turning to harassment, and it's not a good, harbinger for the future of the country.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. John, thank you so much. Always great to get your analysis.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, New developments in the path to sainthood for Pope John Paul I. Plus, what the Holy Father says about loving our neighbor. The Beatification Mass for Pope John Paul I will take place in September. The Holy See made that announcement earlier today. Pope Francis will preside over the Mass. Pope John Paul I served for only 33 days in the fall of 1978. He is remembered as the Smiling Pope. A Catholic cardinal in Austria is the latest to express concern over the Synodal Path in Germany. Cardinal Christoph Schonborn joins church leaders from Europe and around the world in accusing some German Catholics of using the process to push a political agenda. Joining us now from Austria, near the home of Cardinal Schonborn, is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, great to see you as always. So tell us, what did the Cardinal say, and why could his criticisms be important for the Church in Germany?
Well, thank you, Tracy. I'm here in front of St. Stephen's Cathedral in the historic center of Vienna. Behind me is also the palace of Archbishop Christoph Cardinal Schonborn, who is one of the most prominent German-speaking bishops. He's well known across the world, not least because he was working together with Cardinal Ratzinger for the Catechism of the Catholic Church. His words weigh a lot in this part of the world, Tracy. And he found very clear words for the Synodal Path, a process started by German bishops and people employed by the Church there. The initiators of the Synodal Path claimed to push for reforms in order to combat abuse. In the most recent gathering, participants voted in favor for women priests and acceptance of same-sex marriages. The leading bishops said they would accept that vote. And this is exactly where the criticism of Cardinal Schonborn and many other bishops sets in. He called it the abuse of the abuse and showed surprise about how quickly the abuse question became a question of changing Church's teachings. More concretely, Schonborn said he has doubts that there was a real connection between abuse in the Church and its general principles. And he also rejected the much propagated suggestion that the Church would vanish if it would not modernize. A discussion about synodality only makes sense, said Schonborn, if certain biblical and long-held views on the Church's teachings are not simply disregarded. As an example, he named the priesthood. To question this concept in a fundamental way is a step into the wrong direction. Something went simply wrong, he said.
And Andreas, I understand he is not the only church representative that's speaking out against the synodal process. What more can you tell us about that?
Sure, there have now been many bishops and cardinals voicing their concerns about the current path in the German Church. First and foremost, Pope Francis himself. On several occasions, he warned the German bishops not to split the Church in Germany and allowing certain proponents of the synodal process to push their political agenda. Only recently, he said that Germany does not need a second evangelical church. And as you know, Tracy, most of the topics that are being lobbied for are a reality in the German Protestant Church already. Why those who are so eager for change not simply join other Christian denominations is an interesting question. Proponents have said that they want to help modernize the Catholic Church in order to save it from losing more and more faithful. Now, while it is true that the numbers of German Catholics are declining, and not least because of the mandatory church tax introduced by Hitler to destroy the Church back then, which is in fact to this day, it's also true that a majority of those active in the synodal process are church employees. If they leave, they also will lose their jobs. And this is also the reason why there's only discussion about how to change church teachings and church hierarchy and not how to promote the gospel in Germany. And Cardinal Kasper, a German prelate residing in Rome, called it the original sin of the synodal way because it had to put aside the letter of the Pope and his invitation to start from the gospel, taking on the primary mission of evangelization. The synodal way took its own path, he said.
And Andreas, before I let you go, what comes next for the synodal path in Germany?
Well, the fourth gathering for the Synodal Path is planned in September and the last one in March 2023. Experts claim that the synodal process and its outcome have no legal relevance for the Church. However, the bishops did promise the participants to commit to the decisions voted on. This could mean that we're facing a schism. At the same time, Pope Francis called for a global synod of synodality, which is ongoing. And Cardinal Greg, who is responsible for this global process, has told me a while back in Rome that the dioceses around the world have very different topics on their mind than what is being discussed right now in Germany. It might well be that the whole German process is only a little more than the often quoted storm in a teacup, or maybe beer glass, as many Germans would prefer.
Well, Andreas, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief in Austria tonight. Thank you again. And finally tonight, Pope Francis asked the faithful to treat others with the same compassion as God treats us.
Il credente infatti somiglia molto al samaritano. Come lui è in viaggio.
At a Sunday address to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says we are called to be like the Good Samaritan and help those in need. To do so, we must overcome, quote, selfish indifference. The best way to do it, love others the way God loves us. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.